Hello, everyone. I wanted to do a new video just going over the live news section of my channel, this news section I've added. Just because I found there's some really uh, interesting things to show. So again, as I said, I've redone my YouTube channel and added a bunch of sections. And the very first section that you'll see is this live news section, which is all these 24-hour news channels that I can find, lots in English, but also lots of not in English as well. This is something I'm going to keep adding and maturing as things go, and adding and removing channels as I sort of basically what I'm trying to do is to get a quality set of channels that are channels that regularly produce quality news reporting. Not that there's a lot of channels out there to choose from, but the ones that I've been putting on here, I'm intending to be, like I said, a list of at least relatively quality news sources. Of course, there'll be caveats on each one because every news source has some form of bias. Anyway, let me get into the actual stuff I wanted to show here. So if I click on the live news here, it's going to bring up my news playlist. If I click on play all, it'll bring me into the view that I want to show you here. So essentially, and let me mute this so we don't get sound. Effectively, by creating a playlist of live feeds, I turn YouTube into a television. So effectively, I can change channels and, the old TV lingo, by simply clicking on one of these video feeds, and I'll just switch to the next live channel. So I can basically surf the news as it's happening. And because it's such a wide range of news sources, I find this actually really kind of a fascinating process because I can go to the Deutsche World News or France 24 or Sky News and watch news from a European perspective and a Western European perspective. I can go to I-25. Actually, they don't do live, but they do put some video on there for an Israeli perspective. Al Jazeera for another sort of Middle Eastern perspective from Qatar. I can go to Africa. There's actually a number of Africa channels here. I'll sort of go through these as I go through. As I said, interesting that Sky News is blocked in Canada. I usually surf with a VPN so that I can essentially mask my computer to look like it's coming from any country. So I usually don't have a problem with this. I would expect if you use a VPN and you connect with either a British IP or I know an American works because I often surf with American, and like I said, this usually plays no problem. But essentially, I can scroll up and down. No matter which video I click on, the list maintains itself because when you're in a YouTube playlist view, it stays in playlist view regardless of which video you're watching. If you click down past the playlist, and like I said, there's actually quite a lot here. Ooh, that's lovely. Let's hide this chat. Hide chat. So if you click on any of the videos down below the playlist here, you'll be taken out of playlist view. But that's fine. Just as long as you stay up playing in this area here, you can click on any of these video channels and you can switch to a different channel. Here's an India one, all in English. There's actually 3 English India channels I found, although I think DD News alternates between English and possibly Hindi. I can't remember exactly what the other language is for that one. I actually have found a number of Indian channels streaming 24/7, as well as, like I said, a lot of African channels. And my guess is that's just due to cost of infrastructure. It's probably cheaper now to start a 24-hour YouTube or internet channel than it is to start something that's broadcasting over the airwaves. Anyway, so that's, like I said, basically it. Maybe I'll just walk through the playlist and sort of give you my thoughts as far as how I'm organizing things. I'm trying to keep all the English stuff at the top because, again, I'm primarily an English speaker. But I try and clump things together by language. So, like I said, France 24, Deutsche World News, Euro News, these are all European, and Sky News are all European channels that stream their news live. Al Jazeera, like I said, is from Qatar. And I put them up so high simply because they tend to cover areas of the world where these other European sources don't. So if I sort of hit France and I find France to be, out of all the European streaming channels, tends to have the most varied. They tend to go over the world quite a bit as well, and also tend to uh, be one of the more factual and information based, and really can do some hard hitting stuff. So, not to say that Deutsche World can't, or Sky News or Euronews can't. I find Euronews tends to be a little more sort of gearing. Their audience seems to be more towards a general public audience, whereas perhaps France 24 is more towards someone who's really looking to inform themselves on the news in depth. Same thing with Al Jazeera. Deutsche World News tends to be a little on the lighter side as well, although they have a sister channel, Deutsche World Documentary, which put out some great videos as well. And in fact, I'm going to probably feature one of them later this week. And then Sky News, again, that's your British sort of perspective. Channel 4 and BBC both also put their news on YouTube, but neither of them stream their channel 24/7, which is a shame, especially for the BBC as a public broadcaster. I think that's pretty... if you're creating news, you should be trying to reach as wide an audience as possible, and you shouldn't be hiding it behind paid cable subscriptions. So... Anyway, that's my little rant. The same thing applies to CBC. CBC does stream its national news. So CBC won't be showing up here because they don't have a dedicated 24/7 channel, even though they do have a dedicated news channel 24/7. CBC News, they changed. It used to be News World, and it's been changed to something else. But again, I'm going to cover that at another point, I think, as well. So you can get some channels that are a little more intermittent. ABC News out of Australia, they seem to stream mostly 24/7. Although I did check a couple days ago and they were offline, so I'm not sure exactly as to how dedicated a source this is, but they are streaming every day at least, in the same way that CBC streams the national. But ABC News is a news network, so they actually stream for a much longer period of time. Bloomberg is a conservative leaning news offering. They're one of the better conservative news sources out there, and certainly a much better alternative to something like Fox News. Getting down into some of these, so TRT's one I just found. I don't know much about that one yet. Africa News is a sister channel to Euronews up here. But with obviously an African focus as opposed to a European focus. It tends to have some pretty interesting stuff on there, and again, they tend to be pretty broad in their spectrum. They're not based out of a specific country in the same way that Euronews isn't specifically addressing a particular European country. So you tend to get some interesting around the edges kind of news covers that you might not get on some of the national news sources. Then we have NTV Uganda, which is a Ugandan 24-hour news channel, and then KTN News out of Kenya, also 24-hour news. Uganda and Kenya share a border, and obviously there's with Somalia right next to Kenya, and it's an interesting political region. So it's kind of neat to get news sources from two neighboring countries that. So I'll be kind of curious to see as time goes on, when a story that impacts both nations, to see how it'll be interesting to see how the two sources report on the same issue and compare and contrast. After I get past that, we leave Africa and head to India. So here's CNBC TV18, which is a English news channel, obviously part of the NBC umbrella of networks, but like I said, it is an Indian channel, and in English. DD News is 24/7, but it's not always English, so depending on the time of day, you might be getting English or like I said, non-English language broadcast. But I believe the non-English ones, I was going to say I think they subtitle, but maybe I'm wrong on that. India Today Live is another one that also out of India that broadcasts 24/7. Some of these are standard definition broadcasts as opposed to high def, particularly DD News. it's interesting that India seems to be lagging behind the rest of the world as far as high def broadcasting goes, but they're at least ahead of most of the Western world as far as getting their news on the internet and streaming live and on a on a public facing site like YouTube. So they win some, they lose some. Then I get into the all their languages. So I've got 4 French 24/7 channels now. 3 of them are coming directly out of France, one being the French version of France 24, and then France Info and RFI are both French entities as well. African News is the French version of African News, so I'm going to be curious to compare the English and French versions of African News and see exactly what sort of overlap there is, or if they, if there's differences, just because I happen to speak both languages. Then we get to the German section. So DW Deutsche is the German primary German news channel that streams 24/7. This is the German edition of it. DW Español is their German channel in Spanish, and then this is the French Spanish. So I guess I've only got the one German 24/7 source, a couple of Spanish 24/7 sources. Then we get into some outside the rest of the world. So this is some Arabic language, Russia. So a lot of these are all foreign languages from different places. A lot of these, of course, Southeast Asia, from Bangladesh to Pakistan to Malaysia, I believe that one is. I haven't actually managed to source the location of all of these yet, so I'll probably address that at a later date as well. But like I said, there's a lot of different channels out there. And there's even a few down here. Actually, there's a couple of English ones down here I just added today. NASA actually streams a couple 24/7 channels, it looks like. So I'm not quite sure exactly what to do with them. They're not strictly news, but they are informative. I may create a new playlist for this type of content if I can find more of it out there. But for now, I'm going to throw it in here, possibly leaving it at the bottom, just because it is a different thing. And there's a few others. So I think some of these are also English. Some of these, they're definitely foreign languages down here. But a couple of these, I think possibly this one is English. Like I said, I just went on another. I've been doing this the last every few days, sort of going onto YouTube and doing a search, looking for live now channels. Using the search filtering, you can search for only things that are currently live, and just searching for things like news channel, 24-hour channel, that sort of thing, and just seeing what comes up, which is how I'm finding most of this stuff. But again, if you happen to find if you're aware of any live news, anything 24/7, or even live channels in general that I haven't added to this list, please leave a comment at the bottom of this video, and please subscribe as well to my channel if you enjoyed this little video and are interested in following this whole little project as it evolves. I think there's actually a real wealth of opportunities I could do with this, and just kind of curious to see if other people also find this as interesting as I do. Anyway, I'll sign off for now, but we will talk with everyone later. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.